I love my vagina. 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 I love my vagina.
I love my vagina.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone.
To the vegan Vanguard who loves their vaginas.
Yeah, who loves their vaginas.
So much that we're dedicating an entire episode to the vajan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The vajan. Yeah. I'm sort of bummed that they didn't say vagina, but maybe I'm not getting the joke.
I don't know. It kind of sounds better in the song. It's like vagina. Yeah. Kind of smoother.
Yeah. I just feel like that word has been so taboo for a long time that anytime you get the opportunity to say vagina, V-A-G-I-N-A.
Yeah. But anyway, so big news. We are sitting across from each other right now. At the table, we're holding hands.
Oh
we're touching each other.
Yeah. You're sitting in the seat that I've recorded all of our podcasts in.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. I think
this
this is the seat.
Either way,
across the table.
But we are together in Paris. This is outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
So before we start, I think we should just shout out that we're hosting a meetup this Friday at 6 p.m. Where?
Which will be tomorrow when this podcast comes out, right?
No, it's this podcast. Oh shit, we can't announce this.
Oh, we can't announce it. Okay.
You'll just cut that part.
Well, we're not. We had a great meetup. We're anticipating last week in Paris.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we've really got our shit together.
We do. Anyway.
So, Maxie got to Paris 2 days before I did because I was in Berlin for a little bit. It really sounds like we're jet setters from the podcast lately.
Yeah,
but
serious.
We're not.
I was in Norway.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But you stayed in my little place for 2 days.
Yes.
Was gifted by a terrible leak in my bathroom.
Yeah. It wasn't that bad, but yeah, the floor really started swelling. It was kind of a whole big thing, but
yeah, there's like a little mini mountaintop in the middle of my hardwood floor right now.
Yeah. But it's all good. It's a very nice place, and I felt very, taken care of in here. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then we've been just strolling the town and hitting up some vegan joints and talking nonstop.
Yeah.
And getting super excited about all the podcasts that we want to record.
Mm-hmm.
So we're probably going to do some marathon recording.
Oh, yeah.
While we're together.
Yeah. Hopefully this is going to be a back-to-back day podcasts.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, we will be recording one every single day until Sunday when Maxie leaves.
We will also be recording a Q&A video. And it's going to be quite long because we got quite a few questions.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that.
Me too.
So,
today we're going to be talking about something that we have been talking about together for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess before we start, I'm going to just say, Dad, I know that you love listening to all my content, and I love you for that, but I think you should probably turn this one off at this point.
Really?
Yeah, I think that would be good. So, okay, moving into
that's meaningful information for everyone to hear.
Yes, it is very meaningful, but anyway.
I could see why it's awkward.
Why it's awkward. So, moving forward now, without parental listening.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, my parents don't listen to this podcast anyway, but hopefully when they see the title, they're not going to be like, what the heck? Maybe this is one that I should listen to, although hopefully not.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about something that we've been talking about for quite some time, particularly since an experience that I had recently. I think I've talked about this before that I have been in a long-term relationship for quite some time, which ended last year. And so I'm back on the dating scene and trying to navigate, having sex with new people. And so, yeah, I had met this one person. We really hit it off. We like had a lot of chemistry and whatever. But I could tell that there was a lot of anxiety for him around getting me off. And we'll get into this later, but yeah, like first few times that you're with a new person, like the woman is probably not getting off, right? But it just created a lot of tension, and we'll get into this more later, but it just really spawned a whole bunch of conversations between the two of us around like the pressure women feel to fake orgasms, the pressure that men feel to give women orgasms, and just this whole, I don't know, unequal playing field for orgasms, and just the male centric way that sex is presented to us everywhere we turn, in movies, like in porn and everything, and just how it's actually damaging to real life intimate relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So we really wanted to tackle all of this stuff, obviously from a deeply feminist perspective, and we think it'll be a really good PSA for everyone, frankly. Like we're just gonna like break down and like demystify the female orgasm and like all the shit that's built up around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on, we have a few stats to back up what we're saying on top of like hundreds of personal anecdotes that I know from myself and also from my other female friends. So this is from Miss Fender's video on YouTube. Miss Fender is a YouTuber that I really like, but I think that her stats are from Durex, she said.
Something like that.
Yeah, and something like that.
I think a lot of them are Canada specific or US specific, but still, this is, you can generalize.
Oh, yes. So 61% of Canadian men regularly achieve orgasm versus 76% of women who do not.
That is absurd.
Yes.
Absurd.
Yeah. And actually, when we were discussing this stat with Mexi before the podcast, I was like, 61% of men only achieve orgasm during sex? Like,
yeah, regularly during sexual encounters. That, or maybe,
I feel like it's more than that.
Maybe she didn't even say during sex. Maybe it's just 61% of men regularly achieve orgasm, period.
Huh. I think it was during sex, though, because 76% of women do not. I feel like a lot of women do achieve orgasm like when they're masturbating.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. So
yeah. Basically, I mean, it definitely shows like the inequality, I guess, of men who regularly achieve orgasm during sex versus women. But even though the numbers are shocking in and of themselves, I feel like it's even more than 61% of men who achieve orgasm during sex.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But
we were saying that like we haven't really been with men who like haven't finished unless there was like some kind of problem or like interruption or like something going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is not to say that we should necessarily think that men should orgasm all the time either, but
no. And I think there's a huge pressure for men to also achieve orgasm, and then also for women to feel like, well, if they didn't, they must be doing something wrong.
Yeah, or I just must not be desirable, or I must not be pleasing them.
Yeah. So that's the first stat. The second one is 82% of cis men. Oh yeah, we wanted to premise this conversation by saying, we're going to be equating vaginas with females or women and penises with men or males a lot in this conversation, but that's certainly not. That's certainly not to negate the fact that certain women have penises and certain men have vaginas, etc.
Right, yeah.
So 80% and this is talking in heterosexual relationships too. I mean, we live in a binary world and these stats are very heterosexual. So 82% of cis men expect to orgasm during a sexual encounter, and only 47% of women do.
Count me as one of those 40% or 47% girl.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to expect it, but I don't.
I do, even if I know that a lot of times, it won't be the case. I'm just like, yeah, but I do though. 'Cause that's that's kind of not the point, but it's like that's what we want to do together, you know? It shouldn't just be like one person is expected to and the other person is expected to just like enjoy the experience regardless. Like, sorry, but you know, come on.
Definitely. I just know that a lot of women don't orgasm during sex, and I feel like since you've been in longer term relationships, you do, which is fucking great.
Yeah, I've really come to expect that, but I kind of feel like we'll get into it later. Like, there's ways to improve these numbers.
Definitely. Yes, this is not a fatality.
Yeah.
So 94% of men want their partners to orgasm during sex. And so veering away from heterosexual relationships, this stat I think is really telling. Lesbian women orgasm 75% of the time versus 24% of straight women.
24%?
Yeah, see, that number is really not shocking to me.
That is so shocking to me.
Yeah, because I definitely think if I think about my pool of female friends, I would definitely say that 1 in 4 of them do not orgasm during sex. I mean, only 1 in 4% of them orgasm during sex.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But are you counting sex as in like foreplay and everything? Because like it's harder to orgasm during penetrative sex if
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, like, yeah, there's definitely some of my female friends who orgasm, especially the ones who have been with their partners longer term, but it's not a rarity at all to, like, if anything, when they have orgasms, it's like an exciting development versus kind of like a very expected, occurrence.
Wow. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I was kind of shocked. I mean, I don't really know in terms of like a lot of my friends, like whatever, but I was shocked to hear like one of my friends who is married actually. So you'd think that like they would have it like on lock. Sometimes she doesn't expect to or whatever. And I was just like, what? Like, I guess because if I'm in a long-term relationship, it's like, yeah, we're going to get this down, man. It's going to be like every time, So like, but anyway, but I think that's not the really, exciting part of the stat or the telling part of the stat. The stat that is more interesting is the fact that 75% of women in lesbian relationships or non-heterosexual relationships, or just people in general in non-hetero relationships, orgasm so much more. And like, obviously they do. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's not obvious to our audience yet, but we're going to get into the construction of masculinity and the construction of femininity and then the way that sex is portrayed to us in like male gaze porn and movies and stuff. So it's not surprising that they're like cis men and cis women have a harder time communicating. They have a harder time like figuring out what the other person likes or like, being sensitive to that. There's just all this social pressure going on and everything. It's just so telling.
Yeah.
So
it really is.
This is a PSA to help everyone move beyond these terrible stats and improve these imbalances.
Yeah. And I think a huge, so I guess I'll get into a little bit how men have been socialized to think about female orgasms. And okay, I'll say that first of all, I feel like there's a disproportionate weight that's placed on orgasms in general. Like there's a disproportionate importance both in the minds of men and women. It's like supposed to be the be all end all, like the most important part of sex. And there's obviously so much stuff that goes on before that and throughout that and like can go on after, like post orgasm as well. And just fixating too much importance on orgasms, I think can create a mental block for both parties. But I do think that it's, important that I do understand why we're centering a lot of these stats around orgasms and a lot of our conversation too, because it's, I guess we're taking it as a representative of the larger power, like the larger pleasure imbalance between men and women. But yeah, I think that a huge problem with female orgasms is that, at least from a male gaze, is that they've been taught to want to give a female orgasm, but not really for the pleasure in and of itself of the women, but rather as like this competitive, domineering feeling that they can unlock in another woman. And I've been listening to a podcast. Unfortunately, a lot of our listeners don't speak French, but it's called Les couilles sur la table, for those of you who do. And it means like the balls out on the table, basically. And it's a podcast all about the construction of masculinity. And it's been really, really insightful because I think so many of my feminist reasoning and like theoretical education up until this point has been from the position of women and, you know, how gender roles have oppressed women. And obviously I know that gender roles are oppressive to men as well, because by feminizing and demonizing or categorizing as inferior everything that is female, you also not only oppress women, but you're also cutting off men from experiencing this entire huge realm of human potential and human emotion. But it really has made me, I don't know, more compassionate to the plight of men and like all the pressures that they experience growing up, and especially around sex. Like, so a lot of episodes come to mind, but every time I'm done listening to an episode, I'm like, well, no shit, they're, you know, like traumatized in these certain ways, or like, obviously they have these really problematic behaviors that cause them to be oppressive towards women, because like, holy shit, I can't believe all the fucked up stuff that has gone into constructing a quote unquote like healthy masculinity. You know, it's so unhealthy. But there was an episode recently about how so many young men grow up, and this trend is fading a little bit now in the past like 30 years, but you know, there's this cultural norm that fathers pass down like sexuality and sexual dominance to their sons by bringing them to go see prostitutes. So now in my feminist consciousness, I would say sex workers, but this is, I guess, in the cultural narrative that fathers pass on to their sons, you know, but like going to see prostitutes to lose their virginity. And also I feel like on another level, still now you see in movies and in, you know, I was not a teenage boy growing up with a dad, but like the dad kind of like giving you condoms and being like, have safe sex, or like, fuck lots of girls at summer camp or something like that. There's this almost like pride that goes, I think men are conditioned from a young age to need to satisfy a lot of women in order to prove their masculinity. And with that comes the necessity to make them come, not because you want them to be, not really because the focus is on women's pleasure, but rather on like collecting almost these like points or these like gold stars that bolster your masculinity. And so it's really just, again, like something that you can compete with other men on, like how many women that you've given orgasms to.
Well, yeah, and like even just not even compete, it's just for your own sense of adequacy. It's something that, you know, you have to do, even if you're not going to tell other men. It's just like, well, like this makes me a man. Like I'm not a man if I'm like not making this woman come. You know what I mean? And so it's like it's all just ego. You know, it's just how you think of yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, from the conversations I've had with other men, and one I'm thinking in particular, like they don't talk about sex that much amongst themselves, like the intricacies of like women's bodies or how they're feeling emotionally connected or not to their partner, but it's more like, oh, like I made her come, or like I fucked this many girls, you know, or it still is very like hierarchical, competitive way of looking at sex, and basically just looking at sex as a way to bolster your own dominance and masculinity. So I think that it does lead to feelings of like failure and self-loathing if you're not able to fulfill that role as a man. And so it's really toxic for both parties.
Because it's such an intimate thing that like there's so much shame around that, like shame and guilt and stuff, that I think I can understand why a lot of men feel. And then a lot of women feel that also, like wanting to make their partner feel like they are such a great lover and that like this was such a great experience, etc. Like I just feel like we need to get all this like shame out of the experience, you know?
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it becomes a way to validate the man's sense of like success and masculinity that they need in order, you know, since the male gaze is honestly so prevalent in sexual encounters, in heterosexual relationships, faking or, you know, being a woman and making the man feel like they're giving you a lot of pleasure becomes a way to fulfill their own pleasure, which then in turn is the only way that you can feel validated to feel any pressure during sex either, you know? So yeah, it's just,
it's so toxic.
Yeah, it's very toxic. And I think another thing that I was listening to on this podcast was this man giving his testimonial of what it was like to grow up as kind of a nerdy kid and not being like, I guess, one of the cool kids who dated a lot of girls. And also in toxic masculinity, I think part of toxic masculinity is like telling men that they have the right to date other women or to have sex with other women. I mean, that's where the whole like incel narrative comes in, sort of like these frustrated poor boys who like are owed sex but can't get it. So this man was talking about what it was like to grow up as a kid, as a sexually frustrated teenager, and how, you know, when he was 14 or 15 or 16, he started watching a lot of porn, as I think a lot of teenage boys do. And he said by the time he started dating actual real human, not virtual women, he was like 22 or something. And his only experience with women really up until that point had been like watching them on a screen in these really oppressive, like pornographic roles of like men physically dominating them. And so, you know, he said he didn't have any girlfriends or any female friends in school. Yes, he was close with his mother, but that really was his only method of interaction with like women beyond basically the screen and beyond porn. And when he started dating women, he had these like very unrealistic expectations around like what they needed to do, how they would or would not get pleasure, and how toxic it is that gender divisions create these inequality, like, create this barrier between men and women and create these completely false expectations. And he was saying like it's actually extremely dangerous because at that point he really deconstructed patriarchy and his masculinity and went into doing a PhD in gender studies. So luckily he kind of got out of that pattern, but so many men don't. And so many men's, I think, primary interaction with women and with sexuality is through these really oppressive narratives of porn. And so,
I call it male gaze porn, but really it's just like the majority of porn. Like the majority of porn is male gaze porn, but it's stuff that like a penis would find pleasurable, but it's not stuff that a vagina would find pleasurable. No. Like we talk about this all the time, but like if there's like this kind of sound ever, no, right? And the women in those videos,
I'm always like that does not feel good.
That doesn't feel good ever. No. And then the women in these videos are just like going wild, like they're screaming, like, oh God, right? It looks like they're having orgasms like 10 times during one sexual encounter. And so men walk away from that thinking that like, this is what sex is. And like, this is what's sexy. This is what women find sexy. This is how an encounter should look like. And then, so yeah, of course, like women also feel this pressure to perform during sex and to be like, making all these noises and like feigning like they are orgasming just so that they don't hurt the other person's pride or ego or make them feel awkward or whatever. And I feel like women are also really socialized, like we're socialized to really be very accommodating, like if we and to be very empathetic. So if we sense that someone around us, especially someone that we care about, is feeling awkward, is feeling insecure, is feeling whatever, we will like overextend ourselves. And I can't generalize, maybe just me or like, you, but a lot of women will just kind of overextend themselves to try and make sure that the other person like feels really great.
Yeah.
And so, but when it comes at the expense of your own pleasure also, and your own satisfaction and your own feelings, of connection and everything within that relationship, it's just so damaging.
Yeah.
But I can't even tell you, like, my entire, when I started having sex and like through my 20s, faking it was not an irregular thing for me. I mean, I did have a lot of, longer term relationships or whatever that I was orgasming, but like, yeah, it was just not uncommon for me to orgasm, it was not uncommon for me to fake it. Or even if we were like doing foreplay and I orgasmed there, and then we like moved into actually having like sex, I would fake, even though I had already legit orgasmed, I still felt pressure to fake it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be like faking like a second orgasm or a third orgasm, where I'm like, why am I faking these additional orgasms? Like, I've already orgasmed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I feel like this man needs more and more from me, but I'm actually not surprised that women feel like that's what they should be doing, and that men expect that that's what women should be doing also.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that men, I mean, there is so much, it's farcical to me at this point, honestly, just how much importance is given to like the phallus, and to like the penis that is supposed to be this penetrative weapon of domination and of like satisfaction and of basically everything that's good with like humankind. So another thing that this podcast talks about is just how much men have felt the need, and this, like, they go back really far. They go back to like the Roman Empire, and then Aristotle, who created these really oppressive theories around like basically like that a man should be able to have an erection, and that it was like a sign of God, like it was God that gave him an erection. So whenever you weren't able to orgasm, whenever you weren't able to have an erection, or you were, what is that called? Impotent?
Yeah.
Impotent in English. Yeah. Impuissant in French. It was just the deepest shame, because it was like you were possessed by a force that wasn't heavenly, that was like controlling the center of humankind, which is the penis. And they also go on to like just describing still how boys like will compete against each other to like measure their erection size and measure their penis and etc. I think that Freudian psychoanalysis also really sets expectations very, very high for penises, and like I think it's called phallocentrism, right? It's just this idea that the phallus is the locus of power and of domination and of confidence and of like empowerment and basically everything that is good and well, or like all the virtues that make humanity strong. And his whole like theory around penis envy, that basically women have, that little girls grow up envying a penis and thinking that they're lacking an organ, and that also little boys grow up with the fear of castration, because the worst thing in the entire world would be to lose their penis. And I think that the theory goes, I'm not an expert, but I do have a mom who is very into psychoanalysis, so I have heard a good amount about this. Actually, we have this joke now where every time like my brother and I get in a fight or something like that, I'm like, Mom, it's just because I have such bad penis envy. Like, I've just wanted penis my entire life, which isn't true. But that's like what psychoanalysis tells me. But I think his theory goes that little boys, when they look at little girls and they see that they don't have a penis, they have like, they're overcome with this fear of castration, that they could also like their penis could be cut off from them. So girls have penis envy, boys have a fear of castration when they see each other's genitals. And that's, to me, that's such bullshit. I mean, first of all, like, wombs are so fucking amazing. Like, for me, I feel like womb envy would be a lot more plausible. And I think that it's Gloria Steinem who said that, actually. But, being a little boy and realizing like, wow, little girl, this is so like gender normative, but like uteruses can carry life, and you can actually like birth a person, a new little human out of the vagina. Like, I just feel like as a person who didn't have a womb, I would have thought that was amazing and maybe envied that. Again, I think the whole envy thing, the whole envy narrative is kind of silly anyway.
I think Freud's like kind of a hack.
Yeah. I think he did like, he was like a pioneer in many ways.
Yeah, but
there's a lot of theories that have evolved since then, and obviously like his theories were like extremely gender normative and heteronormative and problematic in a lot of ways.
Very problematic.
But and like totally centered around like the phallus and the penis.
Totally.
And so I think that that's really stressful for boys and like learning, or for people with penises socialized as boys to like be able to experience, like have a huge penis and experience erections and like give women orgasms. I just think there's a lot of pressure around that, and that leads them to be less in tune with the other person as their equal, who has desires and who has other ways of achieving orgasm and who has other ways of just like sensing pleasure that don't just revolve around the penis,
Yeah.
And so I think that the pressure, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've felt pressure at least to have orgasms during penetrative sex, because it's like, well, their organ is like, I mean, yeah, it's like absurd and kind of awkward to say it out loud. But okay, first of all, I feel like I grew up with the notion that a clitoral orgasm was not as like mature and as real as like an internal orgasm caused from like inside, like from basically like something penetrating your vagina.
The G-spot.
Yeah, the G-spot. And so, yeah, like clitoral orgasms are thought to be, and I'm sure there's literature around this, and like this was actually like something that was said a lot of times. I don't think I'm making this up, but that like clitoral orgasms are not,
because I'm like, I did not like hear that at all.
We talked about it in college. I did this thing called FemSex, which is like this peer facilitated workshop that is a semester long that really changed my life around female sexuality. Now it's called All Sex because it's not just around female sexuality, but I think they wanted to make it more inclusive, which I think is great. But women feeling shame that they could only get off through like clitoral outside stimulation, that they weren't having quote unquote real like grown up women orgasms through penetrative sex. And like that's such bullshit, because women feel pleasure all sorts of different ways. Also, even when you're having an internal orgasm, it's just that like the clitoris is like a long, almost like iceberg type thing where you see like the tip of the iceberg is the clitoris, but like the whole organ is intra vagina. Yeah. So, but I think that since men and women and whatever, there's this expectation that like just, penis and vagina sex is going to give you an orgasm. I think it like becomes also having an orgasm during penetrative sex. There are stakes of like validating the man's masculinity even more, because like he's doing it through the phallus, or through.
Yeah. So definitely I would say like, yeah, we need to move away from that thought, because especially if you're watching male gaze porn, it honestly just shows it's like a penis just like going straight in and out of a vagina with like no like upward motion or anything. Like you gotta like,
I'm loving your hand motion.
I know. I wish the viewers could see the hand motion, but you gotta have like a down and up, like a little wave, like a scoop up. You gotta be like right close to so you're like on the clit also, and then like going up. Because the G-spot is like up. It's like up and in a little bit. So if you're just doing the like, or like, holding a woman's legs above your head, which don't ever do that, men. Never. I have asked a lot of women about this because it happens to me,
like missionary, and then all of a sudden they just like hold you up like a
it's like missionary, but then they throw your legs up around their neck or whatever.
Like, why?
And it's like, okay, great, now I'm crumpled up in like a little sandwich. I'm so uncomfortable. Like the penis is just going in and out, in and out, in and out. And I'm like, I don't know if you know this, men, but women don't feel anything from that. That just feels like friction of like somebody shoving something in and out.
Yeah.
Like if you're not touching the clit, if you're not hitting the G-spot, it feels like nothing. Yeah. So that's not hot. Anyway, where was I going with this? Yeah, so like it's difficult to give a woman a G-spot orgasm. Like,
Yeah, just I've never had a G-spot orgasm.
I have. I mean, like, I've had a lot of men get me off, like, if we are doing penetrative sex, but they have to be doing it, like, you know, the like, sensual, wavy, the right way, you know? They gotta be doing that. Also, I've had it with, like, a vibrator, and I recently got an amazing, like, vibrator.
Thanks to who?
Thanks to Maureen.
Yes.
Yeah, so that one, yeah, that's great. So, but I'm just saying that, like, no, like, if you're having trouble doing the internal orgasm, forget about it. Like, start sex with a lot of foreplay. Like, eat her out, get her off before you penetrate, and then you can get off knowing that she's been pleasured, she's satisfied, everything's great.
And also you can get off without penetrative sex too.
Oh, totally.
Like, I think that the whole progression of, like, okay, first you use fingers, and then you use your mouth, and then you have penetration, and then it's over. God forbid that if the man comes and, like, inside of you, then, like, the sex is over. Or just, I guess sex is over with the male orgasm in general.
Well, I've had a lot of men, like, even if they get off and they know that I haven't, then they'll, like, do more stuff to me or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so great. I can't tell you the number of times when, like, a man has an orgasm and he's like, oh, sorry. Like, I'm just like, don't be sorry, just keep going.
Oh my God.
You've never had that?
Like, not really.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely have, like, when I was younger, but, like,
yeah, and see, like, I feel like this is sad too for men. It's like they try to, like, hold on as long as possible, you know, to have the orgasm, because it's like there's this finality that is supposed to occur with, like, almost the fireworks of, like, the male orgasm, and then it's just like sex is over, like, it's supposed to, like, culminate in that. And I think that's so much pressure for men, but that's also really frustrating for women, because it's like, well, I think that a lot of women, like, think that, okay, well, once the man has had an orgasm, then, like, the sexual encounter's over, you know. But when men feel, like, really sorry, and they're like, oh, sorry, like, almost, again, like, it's fatality, like, oh, well, like, it happened. I'm just like, no, it's not fine.
Over.
Just keep going, you know, like, don't feel so bad. I don't want you to feel bad. And also, I don't want this to, like, get you off the hook for continuing to want to pleasure me. Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's terrible.
Oh my God, I can't believe you haven't had that.
I mean, I did when I was younger, like when I was, like, in my early 20s and stuff, because at that point, like, men are awkward. They don't know. They don't care. They don't know what they're doing anyway. So, but I mean, lately, yeah, like, if somebody just was like, okay, I guess it's over, I would be like, no, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I'd be like, okay, fine, you can leave, and I'll just, like, use my vibrator then.
Yeah, and this is something that men can learn from too. Like, don't worry if you have an orgasm; it's great, lovely. The more orgasms, the better. Just have it, and then continue, and like,
you don't have to stop.
Yeah, especially if, like, the woman is still unsatisfied or not even unsatisfied, because I hate that this orgasm is just this big mystified, like, scary thing where, like, we don't know how to give women orgasms, and then once men orgasm, it's just like,
oh, it's over.
Oh no, it's over. It's like, no, let it just be part of the process.
Right, exactly. You know? Yeah, it's so ridiculous.
Or not part of the process. You can have sex without orgasms too.
Yeah, if that's something that's fine for you, then that's fine. You know,
it's fine.
But anyway, so yeah, I recommend, like, starting off, like, eating a woman out until she orgasms or whatever. And because then it's like, all right, then you're good. Then it's like, from then on, whatever happens. If it, like, the male orgasm happens, and it's like, okay, fine, like, whatever, you know. It's
some
like,
women don't like being eaten out, though.
Okay, well, whatever. Just do whatever she likes to, like, get her off, you know. And that might not be just, like, penetration, you know what I mean? Or like I always like to think, like, especially with this this experience that I had recently, where I really felt a lot of pressure to fake it with this person because I wanted to make him feel really good about the experience. But I was like, you know what? I would have done that in my early 20s, but, like, as a deeply feminist act, I cannot do that ever again. So, like, I will not be faking it. And I actually felt a lot of shame around that, because I felt like, oh, like, now, like, because I could sense that he was awkward about it. And so I just felt really like, oh, I should have just fixed it. Like, now he just thinks that we're not compatible, or like we have, like, an awkward connection or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, it was, like, really anxiety inducing. But ever since that that whole debacle, I've really just been like, okay, no, like it shouldn't be about performance ever. It should always be about exploring together. And it's like, yeah, men and women, when you're the first time that you're having sex in like a cis-hetero relationship, the woman's probably not going to get off. And it's not because you're like not a Don Juan or whatever. It's because it's awkward. It's a new person. You don't feel comfortable. Like that person doesn't really know exactly what you like yet. Like they don't know like what feels good for you. They don't know, you know what I mean? So it's fine for that to happen. Like it's like for the first like many times that you're with a new person, it should just be about like exploring together, and it should be exciting. It should be like, yeah, let's explore. Like, what do you like? What can I do? Like, whatever. And if it doesn't happen for a while, that's fine. Yeah. I think that's the whole thing with, maybe it has to do with, Tinder, like swipe culture and all this stuff where like people aren't really having like really long-term engagements with people anymore. And so you're only having like 1 or 2 or 3 times with a person. And so if it's not clicking right off the bat, then you're like, oh, we just don't have sexual chemistry, or oh, it was bad, or oh, it was whatever. But it's like, well, you kind of have to like explore together, especially if like so many men are just coming from watching porn and then thinking that that's what a woman likes. Like it takes like a, there's a learning curve, right? But because it's kind of like, yeah, the whole like kind of sweat culture, like date you once, date you twice, okay, leave, new person. Maybe it's like people are communicating that well with each other, or aren't like kind of getting into that really exciting exploring phase and are just kind of like quitting. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that this goes back to our conversations that we were having about like form over substance, like how so much of our world today is basically pursued in order to have certain, like check certain things off on your list or add certain things to your resume. And I think this is like, there's like a almost like a sexual resume too, of just like how many people you've slept with and how many orgasms you've given or how many orgasms you've had. And so I agree that this culture of instant like speed dating really does not help harvesting or not harvesting, like cultivating meaningful relationships that are based around like empathy and like mutual understanding of each other's bodies. And I think that this like form over substance culture has also created just so much alienation and insecurity, where you feel that if you can't take off these boxes, then like you are, you're crap, like you're less worthy. So yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that there's like a lot of shame around it for all genders, and it's harmful for all genders, but especially if you're coming from, I think that porn has just really set completely unrealistic expectations. And another thing that is also, I think, worth mentioning is that many women, at least when they're growing up and when they're teenagers, I think that male masturbation or like boys masturbating is something that is really normalized and encouraged and spoken about. And I think that it's not at all the same for women. There's a lot of girls that I grew up with who refused to touch themselves, or who thought it was weird or disgusting, or who pretended not to touch themselves, And I was definitely, when I was growing up, like when I was like 10, 11, 12, I used to pretend I thought it was like so weird, but like I totally, I think that a lot of women do discover like orgasms and masturbation much, much later. That's an experience too that I've heard so much, but like for me that wasn't the case. Like oh my god, I masturbated so much as a little kid. I was like, me too. I feel like I peaked when I was like 10. Like I'm so much more boring and have so much less imagination and like seriously urge to do stuff than when I was like a little kid.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I know, and like at that age I didn't even know what it was, but I was just like whatever. Like I would just keep doing it because I was like whatever, but I didn't talk about it with anyone. I had no idea what it was. No. Until like much later, because like, it's not talked about for like young girls to do.
Totally. And another thing, I remember like even just, I mean, this is sort of another conversation, but even the diversity in like the shape and size and color of vaginas is really not discussed. Yeah, like, and really not represented in like porn or in the media or even in like our biology textbooks where the vagina is like represented as a V and a slit in the middle. It's like, I don't know, there's like more variety than that. So I think that there's a lot of shame in thinking, okay, like, does my vagina look normal? Does it smell normal? Does it like, how should I touch it? How should I not touch it? You know? And so I think that women don't really, a lot of women, I don't mean to generalize. And again, a lot of people with vaginas, this conversation is really binary and we apologize for that. But I think it's the nature of today's talk that like centers on the general kind of binary culture that we live in. But so I think there is a lot of, God, the words are coming to me in French. There's a lot of like mysticism, or at least not a lot of women don't have a great knowledge about their vagina and what pleasures them and how to give themselves orgasms, and aren't really encouraged to pursue that or to make it any sort of priority. And just growing up as a teenager, like I feel that my focus was so much more on how am I going to give the men pleasure and how am I going to make them think they're giving me a ton of pleasure. Just way more than like, okay, I'm going to find what like truly gets me off, and I'm going to find like the best way to explain that to people, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, cause I used to masturbate a bunch, but even though I knew like what I liked, I still, until like, even today, I'm like learning now how to actually express that to somebody else. Like until now, there's just like, there's so much shame around that. And there's just, so even though I did masturbate and I did know, I still couldn't communicate that to people. So they're like, and I'm someone who was doing that. So for women who weren't even doing that, it's like even a bigger problem, you know? So I think actually we have a bunch of great resources for people, you know, men and women who want to explore the vagina, the vaginal vaginal orgasms. So one of the websites is omgyes.com, and we'll just play here their introductory video clip.
When it comes to pleasure, like actual techniques and what works for women, there's never been any large-scale research done. We decided to change all that. In partnership with the researchers at Indiana University and the Kinsey Institute, we did the first ever large-scale study to understand the specific ways different women find pleasure. What we found is that lots of women share similar techniques, some of which didn't even have names yet, kind of like ingredients that combine in different ways to achieve more pleasure and better orgasms. So we made OMG Yes to put it all out in the open. These techniques come from the collective experience of over 2,000 women, ages 18 to 95. That's a lot of experience. It's a completely new approach, refreshingly honest and direct, so that women, men, and couples can explore ways to make a great thing even better.
So this is a really wonderful resource. Unfortunately, you do have to pay for it, but it's a one-time fee, and then you have it for life. And there's so many videos, tutorials, tips, everything. It's just all about pleasure for women or vaginas. And I think they also have research and stats and stuff on there, which is really great. So I would definitely recommend every woman explore this site to get to know exactly like what brings you pleasure, and so you could communicate that better to your partner. And also for men who are interested in learning more about female pleasure and how it differs from male pleasure. And this is something like the other resource we have is Connor and Brittany's videos, which we'll talk about a bit in a second. But one of their videos, which I really wanted to send to that person who I was having that encounter with, was about the clit and like how much pressure you should put on it. And they were talking, long story short, not much, guys, not much.
Right.
The two biggest, I don't want to say mistakes, but the two biggest like common things that men will do that I believe come from watching porn is going hard on the clit, hard on it, No, girl, no. You gotta caress it. You gotta
really
like
smooth, stroke it like a violin,
absolutely,
you know?
yeah. You gotta like love it up. You gotta romance it. Like, do not go hard on it. Like, so anyway, in this video, they talk
too
about
much pressure. And another little thing, if I can splice in some, I guess we can call it advice, is that many times I'm like, no, softer. And then the dudes think that like, okay, I'm saying softer now, but I want it to build to a higher pressure. But no, I mean, perhaps marginally higher. I don't know. And obviously I'm not claiming to speak for every person who has a vagina, but I think that you can vary speeds to a wide degree. There is not that same wide degree possible in terms of pressure, like how hard you're hitting. Like it never feels good to like really press down on it.
No.
So yeah.
Right. And I think Connor and Brittany really outlined this really great in that video about the clit and pressure on the clit, because they talk about the difference between like the head of the penis and the clit. And especially like if a male is uncircumcised, then they have more nerve endings in the head of their penis, but it's still not that much compared to the clit. But if a man is circumcised, they have much less nerve endings in the head of the penis, whereas the clit has like at least 4 times more, and it's a tiny little nub, right? So like imagine that many more nerve endings in a tinier spot. So if you put like a hard tongue or like a hard pressure on there, it's going to get desensitized like pretty much right away, and then you're going to be like, whoa, it's just going to be too much, you know? It's way too much.
Desensitized, and it can get painful.
Right, yeah. So as Maureen said, like if you want to like...
I thought you were going to say, as Maureen has experienced...
as we all have experienced. So yeah, if you're gonna like build like up to some kind of climax, you know, whatever it is, I understand wanting to like build up, but build in speed,
build in speed, build in location, build in positions. And there's so many ways to build on different things that don't involve building in pressure.
Right. I think the thing is just to recognize that like what feels good for a penis is so different than what feels good for a vagina and a clit specifically. Like a penis, you do want to like build and kind of like go hard at the end, right? You never want to do that on a clit. Never.
No. Yeah. And I think that even actually Connor talks about how a lot of women, because they've also maybe grown up with like male gaze porn, like are too hard. On,
true.
Like,
on a penis.
And I think that yes, they are very different, but also like if you're more, wow, maybe this is like really TMI, but I mean this entire podcast is, I guess, but like I think like, you know, whoever I'm interacting with, even though I'm conscious that they have different like organs that some of them have different like sexual like genitals, genitals that I do, that it's also not that different, and like seeing how they're reacting and like, you know, stroking it almost like in a way that I think feels good, you know, trying to connect with that, like be like, what do I think feels good in that moment, you know?
Right.
And so I think also like men who just see vaginas as this like completely foreign thing that they do not know what to do with, sometimes like just connect with also like your own pleasure and like what you think, you know, how it would feel good to stroke such a gentle,
like a gentle little creature.
A gentle little creature, yes.
Yeah. Totally.
And so we'll link Connor and Brittany's channel in the description box for the people who don't know it. I will say that even though I think it's a really great resource, sometimes so I think from this conversation, you might gather that I'm a very, like, you might have gathered that we're very sexual people, but we're not. Well, at least I'll speak for myself. Like, sometimes Connor and Brittany and like make me feel like everyone should just be like DTF all the time. And I really felt that pressure like in my 20s when I was learning more and more about feminism, just to, I don't know, just this thought that I had to be very sexual in order to be liberated. And I had to sleep with a lot of people, or at least like touch myself a lot. And that pressure can also get I don't know. I mean, first of all, it's like super invisibilizing to asexual folk, you know, who don't want to have sex ever or might have sex but aren't, you know, I mean, this is not a podcast about asexuality, but obviously, actually, we should shout out Vegan Warrior Princess's Attack and the I think 2 podcasts they've done on asexuality. Well, there was one in particular that
one in particular was incredible,
amazing,
and I really resonated with it. I think I shared it.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah,
and I think that Connor and Brittany, but also just like this larger narrative that we should be hypersexual contributes to the stigmatization of asexual folk or demisexual folk. And on top of having a lot of problems with the dominant narrative of like orgasms and how everyone should have orgasms and how I think that hurts sex, I also think that just this idea that that we should be really sexual in order to be like fully empowered and liberated is super harmful. And you can be extremely liberated and extremely empowered and not want to have sex or not want to have sex with random people. Or, you know, I think that we spent a lot of time reclaiming that women were sexual and could have free sex without being, you know, labeled or stigmatized as like sluts or people of lesser value. But sometimes I do feel like that narrative has almost like switched to the other the other extreme where you're expected to it's almost like you're frigid or not empowered if you don't want to have sex all the time. And like, frankly, I don't most of the time. So
like, the reason that
that's fine. Whatever you want to do with your own body is super cool.
Exactly. Yeah. The reason that I identified a lot with that, like asexuality talk is because they were talking about demisexuality. And I kind of feel like I fall into that category because I'm 100% not somebody who is DTF, like, unless I really like you, like unless I really have like excited, strong feelings about you, which I rarely ever do. Like it's rare that I will actually really like another person. When I do, I'm like all in and I'm like, oh yes, like this person is amazing, right? But it's very rare. And if I don't feel that, then frankly, I don't want you touching me. I don't like, that's a very like intimate thing. You know what I mean? So I'm like, totally not someone that's DTF. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not somebody who like needs that, like, you know, I'll like masturbate and stuff, but I'm just like, but there is a lot of, it's not like stigma, but it is kind of just like, oh, like he's like hot, like you should bang
Victorian.
him.
Why aren't you?
Right, exactly. Or like if they're just like, oh, like this guy's hot, like you should bang him, like just have fun, like just do this. And I'm like, that's not really that fun. I'm like, the first couple times I sleep with a man, I'm not going to get off. So so I'm like, if I'm just doing this as like a one-time thing, and I'm not interested in this person, like I'm just not interested in that at all. You know what I mean? But there is such a weird like, what's wrong with you kind of thing, like just have fun. I'm like, okay, that's not necessarily, that's just fun, like, but anyway.
And I think that really varies for everyone, and it's great that you've like figured that out for yourself. I think my experience is a little bit different in that I think that like when you like someone and just in general you maybe like, I don't really get sexual urges that much, and I used to be like super ashamed of that, I guess, when I became a feminist. And I would always joke about like having homework and like my homework being like, okay, I need to go home and masturbate because like I need to get in touch with my body and I need to do like A, B, C, or D, and I need to be like hypersexual. And like that's just a little absurd when you think about it, but actually like still sort of a pressure I feel sometimes. But I also feel like my attraction to people is like not really tied to their personality that much. And that doesn't mean that if someone has a really great personality, I might find them more attractive because of that. But I think in general, like I'm just like my attraction, and I've talked about this a lot with Mexi, but like to people is not like, okay, either platonic, either romantic, either sexual. Like it's very much just like, okay, if I think you're like an attractive person, like I guess a lot of it does have to do with, just the fact that I find you physically attractive. It has very little to do with your gender. It has very little to do with my relationship with you. And it's not really different for romantic partners versus like friend partners. Like I have a very hard time knowing if like I'm attracted to people, or it's rare that I'm just like, like this person's really attractive, like I need to have them now. Like that's not really how my attraction works. I'm just like, wow, people are so fucking attractive in general. And yeah, that's like definitely part of my like also awareness around like pansexuality or bisexuality is just that, God, I don't really know what I find attractive. It's just like, if I find you attractive, like I find you attractive. And the thing that sucks sometimes is that even if someone turns out to be like an asshole, like a really hot dude turns out to be an asshole, like I stop. It's not that I stop finding them attractive. It's that I'm literally like, whoa, I do not want to spend more time in your presence type of thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't impact how I feel about them physically, really. And I remember Nicole in that podcast saying something that was really interesting. She said, for example, when I could watch a show and become really drawn, like really attracted to that person's character in the show and become like in love with them and like fantasize about them sexually. But then if that person, like that same actor, came up to me on the street and said like, hey babe or something, I wouldn't find them attractive because they weren't that character. And for her, and I think for you too, like the demisexual attraction makes you kind of be attracted to like the personality and the entire person.
Yeah.
I don't work like that at all. Like I was like, really, if like an actor was hot playing a certain character in a movie that I was sexually attracted to, like 100%, if they came up to me on the street, if I didn't know them, like, but like plastically they were the same, you know, like physically they were the same, I would still find them really attractive.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I can say like yes or no on that. Depends on like the person or whatever. But yeah, generally I am more attracted to like the person overall. And like if I see like a conventionally hot guy, I'm like, I don't really care. It's not like I get turned on just by seeing an attractive guy. I get turned on if I like, just like feel a spark with somebody and I just get really excited about them and then I'll fantasize about them. Like I was telling Marina that I had this crush on this professor man who like is totally not attractive at all. Like if I just saw him on the street, I'd be like, oh, whatever. But like I would always fantasize about him because just like his brain to me is like so sexy and I'm just like, oh man. So it's just like stuff like that. But I think the point is that like I think like as a feminist act, it is just finding out what exactly you do find attractive and recognizing that it's okay. I mean, unless you're like attracted to like babies or something, but like, you know, like just feeling like you don't have to go along with this swipe culture, hypersexualized kind of norm. Like if you feel otherwise, that's totally fine. If you feel that you are really DTF all the time, that's also fine, you know, but it's just kind of like figuring it out for yourself and like not letting, I don't know, society or other people make you feel any way about it or make you feel like you're less than any or whatever, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I think, since we live in such a sexualized like media landscape and just everything is about sex all the fucking time under capitalism, under patriarchy, it's hard to find that voice and connect with it. Like it's almost, it's definitely been a struggle for me and for I think most people their whole lives, and for men too. Like I do feel bad for men who just are like also extremely insecure about their performance, like unlocking like an orgasm in a woman, and then women having to like fake it in order to validate their masculinity. Something that I wanted to say about the conversation we were just having before too about like attraction is that like not all attraction is sexual, and finding someone attractive doesn't necessarily translate to like sexual feelings. Like I know that asexual people can find people very attractive, but just that doesn't translate to a sexual urge to like touch their body and have sex with them. And that's actually like the case a lot of times with me.
Me too.
And that's fine.
That's totally fine.
You don't need to have, you're not expected to like want to have sex with a person if you find them attractive.
No.
And you can want to have sex because just you want to have sex, and you can find everyone attractive. I also know people in that case.
Yeah.
And
me too.
Like, they're just like, what's my problem? I want to have sex with everyone. Like, it's not a problem. It's fine.
Like, it's fine. Yeah. Like go for it. But
yeah.
So yeah, man, I feel like I could talk about this like all day, and I'm so happy that we're sharing all of this with our listeners.
I'm happy, but I'm like terrified at the same time.
I am not terrified. I am so happy. I feel like this has to be said. I feel like people need to talk about this. We need to demystify this shit. We need to like get over this like imbalance of pleasure and faking and needing to have this ego boost as a man and everything. Like we just need to destroy this all.
Yeah.
Orgasms for all.
Or
or none.
Or just like communication and empathy and pleasure pleasure for all, you know?
Yeah.
And so if I can recommend, I guess, like I'm no sexpert, but I think that a really important thing to do is like communicate more with your partner. Ask them what they like, but also that can get sort of stressful sometimes. And someone's like, "What do you like? What do you like?"
Yeah.
You know, like just communicate as openly as possible. Ask the person what they like, but also don't make them feel like they have a problem if they can't have an orgasm.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you the number of women that I have known who say like, well, I can never orgasm during sex. I have a problem. It's like, no, you don't have a problem, and you'll get there or you won't. But I think that this like hyper focus on orgasms is really paralyzing. Sorry, I think that's ableist. Is it?
I don't know. It's a really good word, though.
It's a really good word. Let us know if it is. But oh wow, that made me lose my train of thought a little bit. But yeah, just like focusing on really listening to your partner and enjoying the present moment. Like sex is nothing if it's not like an enjoyable. Just really learn to have fun with it and like be in the moment. Don't be in the like 10 minutes from now when supposedly like one of you guys is going to get off. Don't be like don't be rehearsing things about porn in your mind. Like just try to like appreciate the person or the people's bodies that are around you and ask them what they want. And
and like in terms of asking them what they want and how that can maybe get like also awkward if someone's just asking you don't really know how to answer, or like when you do answer, like go soft, and then they go soft for like 10 seconds and then they just change or whatever. So maybe like if someone's having a hard time expressing to you like what they like, then maybe just try like exploring and kind of like do something and be like, do you like it when I do this? Like is this, you know what I mean? Like just like figure it out as you're going along. Like it's playtime, like just play with each other and like and figure it out as you go. So but yeah, just you have to really, that's why I don't really enjoy, or I don't like, I'm not into like one night stands or whatever, because like for me personally, I don't like, if it's just a new person, I don't feel comfortable enough with them to be open and fearless and like courageous and communicative or whatever, because it's like, this is a new person. Oh my God, I'm naked. Oh my God, they're touching me. Oh, like it's just, it's kind of like an awkward thing. So I just feel like whether you are into one night stands or like into like if you are like with somebody that you're going to get into this stuff more and play or whatever, I just feel like every experience you go into, just get rid of the shame and just like totally be like, if I'm going to enjoy this experience or like have pleasure or whatever, like I have to just be open and like be willing to talk and be willing to just be vulnerable. And like
odds are like the other party is feeling insecure as well, or is also dealing with like a whole bunch of cultural baggage that is making them act in certain ways. And the other thing that I will say is that no pressure guys, but I mean girls, but if you're a woman and you're faking orgasms, I would really urge you to like, I don't think you're like a bad person. We've all done it, but like really urge you to deconstruct why you're doing it, who it's serving, and how it's making you feel once you faked that orgasm. Because I think that I totally get it. I understand why women feel the pressure to do it. And I think that we've talked at length about like, the pressures that make it so that we feel like we have to be like super expressive during sex. But like, God, it's just like, no, you shouldn't have to do that. And I'd really challenge you not to. And if that makes your sexual partner like feel some sort of way, like that's on them and that's not your fault, and don't let them make you feel guilty for it.
Exactly.
And I think it's so normalized to exaggerate noises during sex. I was telling Maxie, I don't understand why it's so normal for women to make a lot of noise during sex, but not men to make any noise. Like sometimes I'm like, hello, like what? This is not normal. Like, and I feel like that also links to just the way that men are socialized to like not like express emotion or not like express like corporal feelings about like either like pain or sadness or grief. It's always like, anger or like complete neutrality or quote unquote rationality. And I just do not understand. I fucking hate that about sex. I'm just like, why are women expected to be like so loud when it's obviously like they're doing it for the men? It's fine if you want to be loud during sex. Like I mean, also if you're having pleasure, it makes sense to like make noise when you can, you know, when you're in an isolated place or something. Saying this for all the people who live in very close quarters with their neighbors or their building. But don't feel the need to like, I wish women didn't feel the need to fake orgasms or to be extra loud. And I also wish the men didn't feel the need to like not fucking make noise. And also, what does that say about the fact that men don't feel the pressure to show that they're enjoying it to get the woman off? Like, do you know what I'm saying? I feel like the fact that men don't need to make a show is also part of the fact that this expectation that men are satisfied by giving someone else pleasure and like that validating their masculinity, like that's obviously not really the same for women. Otherwise men would feel the need to make a lot of noise and to tell the women like, oh my god, you're like pleasing me so much. And like,
I guess I think it's also that like the men are just expected to come every time. Like that's just expected to be like the end of sex is like the man comes. So it's not like, of course he will come. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But like, you know, we feel the need to like make a lot of noise in order for the men to feel validated in their masculinity. And like, why don't they feel the need to do the same thing to validate us in our femininity? I mean, I guess that's the construction of femininity and masculinity that requires different things, you know? I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, it's true that's like such a weird like.
Yeah, I think like normative sex, at least I've seen in porn, they're just like not making any noise.
Yeah, they're not making any noise, and the woman is screaming. Like, I think that's just so telling, actually, about like.
and also there's this, I mean, the whole like myth around like virginity and also taboo around female masturbation. It's like we should wait until another man can get us off, you know, to make us feel pleasure and not really explore that for ourselves. And so it's supposed to be this mind-blowing, fucking wall-shattering, screaming fest the second we get lucky enough to have like a penis inserted in our vagina.
Oh my gosh. No, you're so right.
Let me tell you, it is not that way.
It is not that way. And you're right. How many times have I felt pressure to like make like more noise? Like, and it's just like, there's not really that much noise you need to be making, really. Like, even if you are feeling pressure, like you don't need to be like screaming every 2 seconds because it's just like, okay, I don't know.
Also like very few women, I guess, scream very loudly when they're masturbating in their home.
No, I don't make any noise.
Trust me, we get a lot more orgasms than during sex. So, like, obviously, it's a performance during sex.
Obviously, that is such a good point. Yeah, like I'm like quiet when I'm like masturbating.
I mean, like no one can hear me. You know.
That is so true. I never even thought about it that way.
Yeah, so it's not like just a thing that women need in order to like have an orgasm. They also need to like scream their fucking like pipes out. Like they don't.
And it's not an organic thing because if we're like getting off all the time with our vibrators and we're not making noise, and then like we have That's so funny.
And it's not that making noise isn't fun. Like, sure, it's
it
fun.
is. Yeah,
it's fun because it makes your partner like it communicates to your partner how you're feeling, but it needs to be like a two-way street. Like,
or it also just needs to be like not so overdone and like and not faking the actual orgasm. That's the thing that really needs to not happen.
Yeah.
Because that just feeds into this whole like problematic sexual division of pleasure and like patriarchal vision of sex and everything. And also I don't want to fake it because I'm like, if you're not, because I want sex to be, like I said, like exploring and like getting to know what I like and like, you know, figuring each other out. And so if I'm faking it, you're going to think that what you're doing works and is that what you're doing gives me pleasure. And so you're never going to learn anything else. You're not going to ask any questions because you're going to be like, oh, I already know what I'm doing. All right, this works great, you know? And I think
we're really fucking ourselves over.
We're totally fucking ourselves over. And then and then you're also fucking over like other women who are going to sleep with this man because then they're going to be like, like how many men have I slept with who have been in like long-term relationships?
And I'm like, oh my God, yes.
Yeah. And like, they're going hard on the clit. They're like doing the like, they're putting my legs above their neck. They're like just doing the like P and the V in and out without any wave motion or anything. And I'm like, really? Did your last girlfriend enjoy this? Because I know she didn't.
I know.
Flat out she didn't. So I'm like, I guess she made you believe that she did. and now I have to deal with this. And then if I start to say, if I don't fake it, then you think something's wrong with me, or you think there's something wrong like with our sexual chemistry, and that like we just don't fit together. And it's like, no, this is just normal, and like we need to like explore this together and figure out, you know, how we're gonna get there together, you know?
Absolutely. And every every vagina works differently. I'm sorry. Every vagina works differently, and we're not claiming to know everything about how every vagina works. However, I will say that there are certain things that I've had done to me where I'm like, I know with near certainty that no one enjoys this.
No one. And that's what the OMG Yes website talks about, because like they've done all this research, and like, yes, there's obviously variation between vaginas, but there are, I think they have like 8 like solid tips that across all vaginas, these are either must do's or must don't do's. So it's like, sure, there's variation, but like there is also a lot of commonality. And so
Absolutely.
So another like bit of advice, I guess, that like I would give, and again, I'm also not a sexpert, but I would also encourage women to play with themselves, and I would really encourage women to like get themselves a vibrator, and also get themselves like a dildo, and maybe it's like a dildo vibrator, and like practice with yourself, like practice giving yourself G-spot orgasms and figure out how that works. You know what I mean? Like,
I've tried, girl.
With like a dildo?
Yeah.
You should get the one that I have, because it's gonna.
It's not like a double. Yeah, no, I know, but they're so expensive. They're like
it was like the same price as just the regular vibrator.
Okay, maybe we'll do that later.
Anyway, even if it doesn't work, just like try it out, like play with yourself, like, you know, get some toys, whatever, like do what you got to do to figure out like what gives you pleasure. Maybe sign up for OMG Yes or whatever. And just like really figure that out, and so that you can communicate that with your partner. And if you're somebody that like, it just doesn't work, then like fine, that's also fine. Like just try, you know what I mean? Just so that you really get to know your own body for sure, so that you don't think that like there's something wrong with you, or that you're just like frustrated and you don't know what to say to someone if they ask what you like, you know, like really just like get into it.
Yeah.
And one last recommendation I have, I think, would be to seek out more like feminist porn or that kind of thing. Porn that's actually like, that would be pleasurable for a woman to watch, and that looks like the woman is actually like legit enjoying herself, you know? I mean, I still masturbate like, you know, quite a bit, but I've stopped really looking at porn because I had a good source of kind of like female gazy porn where it was very clear that the women were actually getting off. And to me, that really turns me on. And like now if I get aroused and I'm like, oh, I'm like gonna masturbate or whatever, if I actually go to look at male gaze porn, I'm turned off. I'm turned right off actually, because I'm like, no, this does not look pleasurable. And this woman is obviously not enjoying this. And like this man, it's just, it's just not nice. So I would say, I think Anastasia actually linked some more inclusive, like feminist kind of porn that also featured differently abled people and like people of color, and in ways that aren't like fetishized. So I would say like seek out things like that if you're interested in like watching porn that like is not going to, I don't know, taint your brain and like taint your whole vision of like sexuality and like gender and stuff.
Absolutely. Recently I got into, via a recommendation from a feminist podcast, downloaded and also sent it to Mexi actually, a DVD, like some of Erica Lust's work, who's like a porn director, I think from Barcelona or from Spain. And I don't know, I was like sort of disappointed.
Me too, actually.
Because I still think it's super normative. Largely everyone is white.
Yeah.
Everyone has a body that's like conventionally attractive. Everyone, like they're all non-disabled. And I don't know, I was just like, wait, this is being propaganda. This is like, people think that this is feminist porn, that like this is still porn, that it is like really normative. I mean, it was still vastly better than a lot of the porn out
Yeah,
there.
it was definitely better.
But I don't know. I was pretty disappointed. I was like, please tell me that this is
Yeah.
not the extent of feminist porn. And it's not.
It's
you know?
not. It's not. But yeah, and I could also tell like they were kind of doing some like similar moves that they would do in regular porn, and then I could also tell that the women were kind of like putting on a show.
Mhm.
And to me, whenever I know that someone is like kind of putting on the show, it kind of ruins it for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, I didn't find it to be like revolutionary in any
No,
way,
me
really.
either.
But that's not to say that it isn't out there. And like I've seen like a lot of like good stuff that like is more appealing. And I think I'll check. Maybe we should check out Antastasia's recommendation and maybe link that
Mhm.
below because she's really great also.
Mhm. And I think that Erica Luz DVD like actually sort of perpetuated the idea that women who are empowered are it's like super sexual.
Yeah.
Like when in the clips where the women were talking about just like sex toys and BDSM, it was just they were all like
Yeah.
obsessed with it. And
Yeah.
also in that same vein, I think it's really great a lot of the I guess diversity and like diversification of the narrative of like what is healthy versus unhealthy sex that has gone on in the last few years. And I think there's like a lot of great things that have and I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but I think that the second you try to analyze sexual dynamics or sexual role play and are critical of it, not critical in the way where you're saying, okay, people shouldn't be engaging in this. Like, as long as for me, it's like consensual and done in a respectful way, that boundaries are discussed. Like,
Yeah.
I think that it's fine, and I have no place in judging it. But I also don't think that should keep me from having a critical eye on the dominant narratives just because I'm scared of being labeled like a kink shamer.
Right.
I feel like a lot of times I feel like now it's really encouraged to think of sex and what goes on in society as like two completely different things. It's like in sex, anything goes as long as it's consensual. And like, I agree. Like people can do whatever the fuck they want. I can do whatever the fuck I want. And I don't think I'm not judging it. I'm just saying, I don't think that politics and culture and sex exist in like three completely isolated realms. You know, I think that obviously it informs a lot of what goes on during sex. And I don't think that you need to be like really ashamed if you have fantasies of being dominated or of dominating someone else. And then we all have them. I think like a lot of people have like fantasies that fall in one of those two camps. And I think that it's really important to accept them and to, not think you're a bad person because of them. But I also like some of the shit that I fantasize about. I'm like, well, I still want to just like, why am I fantasizing about that? And I still think that what I've seen as like desirable in terms of power dynamics between genders my entire life like does inform a lot of the stuff that I fantasize about, and I want to stay aware of that and still think that I need to deconstruct it.
That's the thing that's really well said. Like it's not about feeling shame for it, you know what I mean? Like of course you're an adult, you can do whatever you want. Like this isn't about shaming or feeling bad about anything. Like you can celebrate whatever you want, but it's about thinking about your desires and thinking about, well, where do these actually come from? And you know what I mean? And what are the politics that are informing this, or like the societal norms and everything that are informing me having these ideas about sex and about like what my place is in like a sexual encounter, you know?
Yeah, for example, in Connor and Brittany's BDSM video, which like I like, and I do like a lot of the things that they say, and I have this like struggle between thinking it's so great that they're so open and so sexual and so okay with like they have such an anything goes attitude with sex. But then sometimes I do feel like it's just a little bit too uncritical for me. Like in their BDSM video, they just talk about like, oh, it's so fun to like take the power and give the power and have all these different like, and I agree, but I don't think we can totally like put our head in the sand about like what informs those things. Like, and where do we draw the line? Like, what about like race play is a thing in the gay community, and like gender play? Like I don't know. I understand that sex is like a consensual game between like adults, and it's okay. I'm not You know, I think policing sex, if it's consensual, would be sort of like broken window policing of just attacking kind of what comes after all the shit that all of us are like traumatized and put through growing up. So I don't really believe in like shaming people for their sexual fantasies if again they're consensual and stuff like that. No. But I also don't think they're devoid, like we should not analyze them at all, or we should just pretend that they're informed by literal like nothingness. Right. You know?
Like these are not just like innate. No. You know what I mean? Like we're all completely informed by everything that we see around us. Like the way that we've been socialized informs everything that we think and feel and, you know, want to do, etc. So, yeah, I mean, and we're not going to shame anybody for anything, but it's just to say that people should still be okay with the idea of self-reflection and analyzing.
Absolutely. And definitely for myself, like that's true. I think that I went through a period of, I guess, being like over the top sex positive and watching a lot of Connor and Brittany and thinking like anything goes and almost like reclaiming the shit that I had been ashamed about. And that was liberating to me in some ways, but I do think it was like there were certain aspects of it that were problematic because I stopped thinking of these fantasies as things that were influenced by patriarchy and by gender roles. And I just want to maintain an awareness about that. Yeah. And I also think that it's totally, you know, as a, you know, for women, for people who identify as women, it's fine to like want to be dominated. And I get that. So many women like want to be dominated and then could not imagine being someone who dominates their partner. And I think I used to be one of those people. And that's fine. I shouldn't be forced to do anything that I don't want to do, but I don't think that's like devoid of any cultural influence. And I also think it can lead you to expect other men to be fine with dominating you. And I don't know, like be careful about, I guess, mandating that of like another man because I think that I fell into that camp a little bit. I think that a lot of my female friends have told me like, oh, it's fine. Like, just like put their hands here, make them do that. Tell them you want this. And then I sort of realized like, well, maybe if I do that without discussing what the man is comfortable with first, like that's sort of oppressive in and of itself. Like my empowerment should never come at the cost of being empathetic and like with the other person that I'm with, like just because I'm feeling like empowered about asserting these dynamics and just because someone is telling me that I don't need to be ashamed of them anymore, that's just like the dangerous line with dogma. Like if you end up replicating it in this like righteous way that you feel like you're justified to almost like turn the oppression on its head that you've been a victim of, then you risk not listening to the other person and being really unempathetic about them. And I think we're going to do a whole podcast about that too, like replicating hierarchical and like oppressive dynamics in social justice movements just because you feel like, well, since you're fighting for a good cause, you are allowed to you are allowed to abuse other people, and that's never okay. And I feel like in kink sometimes that's the case, you know, like you need to be good about voicing what you want, but you also need to be really, really receptive to like what the other person is comfortable doing to you and you doing to them.
Definitely. Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah. Well, oh my God, I can't believe we're going to put this out.
I'm so happy about this.
Really?
I am so excited. Like, people need to hear this, man. People need to hear this.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, I wish I could just play this podcast for like so many people.
Including like my teenage self.
That I've like had encounters with, including my teenage self, including my early 20s self.
Including the fact that I'm going to need to listen back to this a few times.
Yes. No, this is great. And I would love to hear what everybody thinks.
Yes. Please give us support in the comments. Share your experience. Tell us you enjoyed hearing our experience if you did.
Yes. Oh, we should
check we'll be anxiously waiting. Oh, yes.
Okay, so we have several Patreon pledges.
Damn it. I was like, Patreon? Okay, if you say pledges after, it's fine.
We have several patrons to shout out this week. So thank you so much to Hunter, Maija, I'm so sorry, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maya, perhaps? And Bryce Tothill. So thank you so much to everyone who pledged. If you'd like to support the show, please sign up to be a monthly patron on our website, veganvanguardpodcast.com, or throw us a one-time donation via PayPal, also on our website. Or share this episode. Yes, share this episode with everyone that you know, except for our parents, yes. But spread this around as a PSA to the world. You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.